An elite alien commander watched a battle he thought would be over in minutes. Humans, outgunned and outnumbered, facing a powerful enemy. But what he saw shattered everything he believed about war. The humans didn't just fight back. They rewrote the rules of combat in real time, using creativity instead of strength, and minds sharper than any weapon. What started as an observation turned into a lesson he could never unsee. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give that thumb a solid tap by liking the video. Now let's dive into this unforgettable story. Commander Norik Zanor stood silently on the observation deck of his ship, the Velen Whisper, watching the stars drift across the black sea of space. His deep green skin reflected the soft blue glow from the control panels. 40 years in the Sultan military had taught him how to read enemy patterns, how to detect weakness, and how to measure a fleet's power at a glance. But tonight, he wasn't here to fight. He was here to watch. And what he was about to see would change everything. He thought he knew about war. Far ahead, barely visible on his sensors, two fleets floated near a planet called Moretus III. The Krathor swarm, known for their brutal and relentless attacks, were lined up in a perfect offensive formation, 30 large battlecruisers, all fully armed, moving like a single creature through the void. They had crushed dozens of enemies in the past with that same formation. Most races, including Norik's own, had learned to avoid direct combat with them. They were simply too powerful. The second fleet was smaller, much smaller. Only 20 ships, clearly human-built, older models lightly armored. Norik squinted at the readings. This wasn't a fair match, it wasn't even close. He had seen simulation tests where such a human fleet would be completely destroyed in less than 20 minutes. "Commander," came a voice behind him. It was Lieutenant De La Rin, young and sharp-eyed. "Should we move closer for a clearer view?" Norik shook his head. "No, we remain hidden. This is an observation mission, not intervention. The humans must not know we're here." He turned back to the screen, narrowing his eyes. The Krathor moved into standard combat spread, their weapons charging. The humans, surprisingly, began to scatter. Half moved left, others right. A few even appeared to retreat. Norik frowned. Were they running already? "They seem unorganized," Dela observed. "Are they panicking?" "Possibly," Norik replied. "Or trying to confuse the enemy." He opened a secure listening channel, already prepared by intelligence. Human commanders often used open communication methods. Sure enough, the voice of a human officer came through the static. Calm, focused. "Lieutenant Wren, activate ghost signals now," said a male voice, likely the human fleet captain. Another voice responded, "Ghost signals active, Captain. We've doubled our phantom markers. The Krathor will think we have over 40 ships." Norik straightened. "Ghost signals," he whispered. Within seconds, his own sensors confirmed it. Suddenly, it appeared as if 40 human ships filled the area, though there were only 20 in truth. The Krathor paused, adjusting their formation. Their sensors were likely detecting the same false readings. Norik watched with growing curiosity as the humans continued their odd behavior. A new group of human ships appeared behind the Krathor, emerging from the shadow of a nearby moon. They had been hidden the entire time. The Krathor were now caught, between two flanks. A perfect trap. Norik glanced at Dela, whose mouth had fallen slightly open. "They outmaneuvered them," she whispered. The battle began. Lasers and missiles filled the dark, but the Krathor struggled. Their weapons struck fake targets, phantom ships created by digital illusions. Every time they fired, they missed. Meanwhile, the humans hit true, breaking through shields, disabling engines. It was not luck. It was strategy. The human captain's voice returned, calm as ever. "Initiate Phase 3, let them think we're wounded." Norik's sensors showed several human ships suddenly flicker with damage signals. Fires, system failures, sluggish movements, all false. The Krathor charged forward, believing victory was close. They didn't see the trap until it was too late. As the Krathor closed in, expecting to finish the fight, The damaged human ship suddenly came back to life, fully operational, undamaged, and perfectly positioned for counterattack. In seconds, 5 Krathar cruisers were destroyed. Others began to break formation, confused and panicked. "This is impossible," Norik said quietly. "This isn't how battles are supposed to go." The Krathar commander tried to rally, but their fleet was already in chaos. Some ships were retreating, others spinning wildly without control. A few even fired on each other by mistake, unable to tell real from illusion. Within an hour, it was over. All 30 Krathar ships were either captured or destroyed. The human fleet hadn't lost a single ship. Only minor damage was reported on 3 vessels. Norik slowly sat down, his eyes still fixed on the screen. His heart felt heavy. He had seen many battles, but nothing like this. "How did they do that?" Dela asked softly. "Their ships are smaller, their weapons weaker, but they won." "They didn't win because of power," Norik replied. "They won because they thought differently." He rewound the battle footage, playing it again. This time, he noticed how human officers communicated, not like machines following orders, but like a team solving a puzzle together. Plans changed mid-battle. Ideas came from lieutenants, not just commanders. The human captain didn't shout orders. He asked for opinions. Norik leaned back, eyes wide with realization. In his entire career, he had never seen war approached like this. The humans weren't following the rules. They were rewriting them. For the first time in decades, Norik Zanor felt something new, uncertainty. If he ever had to face the humans in battle, he wouldn't know how to prepare. Because with them there were no patterns, only possibility. And that, he thought, was far more dangerous than any weapon. Commander Norik Zanor sat alone in the dark room, the glow from the screen reflecting off his tired eyes. The battle between the humans and the Krathar played again in front of him. He had already watched it 4 times. Every time he thought he understood it, something new would appear. A small detail, a strange signal, a quiet voice on the radio. Nothing about the way the humans fought made sense. And yet it worked. They had turned a battle they should have lost into a flawless victory. Norik wasn't just confused anymore. He was fascinated. Lieutenant Dela Rin stepped into the room, carrying a datapad. She didn't speak right away, knowing Norik was deep in thought. He nodded for her to come closer. "I found more," she said quietly. "Communication logs, sensor tricks, energy readings. It's all here. Their tactics. They weren't just lucky. They were designed that way." Norik leaned forward. "Show me." Dela tapped the screen. "It's the ghost signals. The humans sent out false energy waves to make their fleet look twice as large. The trick wasn't just the number of ships. They made the Krathar think the humans were everywhere. They attacked from behind, but the Krathar kept aiming forward. It's like the humans played with their minds, not just their weapons." Norik watched the visual feed. Human ships blinked in and out of view, using asteroids and shadows to move like phantoms. The Krathar fired on positions that were already empty over and over again. It was not just confusion, it was control. The humans controlled what the Krathar saw, what they expected, even how they felt. Did they know the Krathar playbook? Norik asked. Dela nodded. They must have. They predicted every move. There's something else. Look at how the humans talk to each other. The captain, Julian West, doesn't give strict commands. He asks questions. He listens. His officers suggest changes mid-battle. They update the plan while fighting. That's chaos, Norik said. That shouldn't work. But it does, Dela replied. It works because everyone is thinking. Not just following orders, but solving problems. Fast. Norik shook his head slowly. He had been trained since childhood to value structure, precision, and control. Plans were everything. Commanders decided and soldiers executed. That was how it had always been. But now he was seeing something else. Something that shouldn't work but did. And not just once. He was beginning to suspect it worked because it was different. The human fleet is more like a mind than a machine, he said. Each part, aware of the others. Each one adjusting in real time. That's why we couldn't predict them. That's why the Krathar failed. Dela pointed to the screen. Watch this part again. The Krathar try to break through on the left. They move fast, clearly expecting to surprise the humans. But the humans are already waiting. Lieutenant Wren tells the captain they'll try that path before it happens. She reads them, Norik murmured. Like a book. She doesn't just guess, Dela said. She understands how they think. Norik sat back, letting the idea settle in his mind. The humans weren't fighting harder. They were fighting smarter. They didn't rely on strength. They used misdirection, speed, creativity. They were rewriting how war worked right in front of him. We used to think victory came from numbers and firepower, Norik said. But maybe it comes from something else, something deeper. From understanding how the enemy thinks. From bending the battle to your own rhythm. Dela was silent. She was still young, still learning. But she knew this was important. She could feel it. I don't think they even follow a single plan, she said after a pause. It's more like they carry 100 plans into every battle and pick the right one the moment they need it. Or make a new one entirely, Norik added. They watched in silence for another few minutes. Then Norik turned off the screen. The room felt cold, quiet, heavy with new thoughts. Do you think we could do the same? He asked. Dela hesitated. Not without changing everything. Norik nodded. She was right. Their military system wasn't built for change. It was built for order, structure, and obedience. But the humans thrived in chaos. They learned from it. They used it. He stood and looked out the window, watching distant stars blink in the darkness. Somewhere out there, humans were still preparing for their next battle. Learning, adapting, evolving. We used to think we were the most advanced, he said, softly. Now I'm not so sure. Dela stepped beside him. What do we tell the High Council? Norik didn't answer right away. He knew what they wanted to hear. That humans were strong, but predictable. That they could be understood. Maybe even controlled. But that wasn't the truth. We tell them the truth, he said finally. The humans aren't just a threat because they fight well. They're a threat because they think in ways we've never even considered. As they left the room, the lights dimmed behind them. The battle had ended. But the questions it raised were only just beginning. 2 weeks after the battle over Meredith III, Commander Norik Zanor found himself standing inside the cold, quiet halls of a Sultan interrogation station. The walls were smooth steel, the lights dim, and the air held a heavy silence. It was the kind of place built to make prisoners talk. But today, Norik wasn't here to break anyone. He was here to understand. In one of the rooms ahead sat 2 humans, captured during a separate skirmish near the edge of Sultan-controlled space. They weren't ordinary prisoners. One was a high-ranking military officer, Colonel Ivy Moran. The other, Tom Kress, was a civilian strategist who worked closely with human military forces. Norik had read their files. Both had helped design several of the new combat techniques that had stunned the galaxy. Lieutenant Dela Rin walked beside him, reviewing data on her tablet. They've been cooperative, she said softly. No resistance. No signs of fear. They even asked if we wanted help understanding their methods. Norik raised an eyebrow. That wasn't something he expected from prisoners. Curiosity, maybe. Defiance, certainly. But offering help? That was different. When he entered the room, both humans stood. Ivy gave a polite nod and Tom smiled faintly. They were calm, not arrogant, but clearly not intimidated either. I'm Commander Norik Zanor, he said, speaking in careful English. I'm not here to threaten you, I want to learn. Tom gestured to the seat across from them. Then we have something in common. Norik sat down. He studied their faces. Clear eyes, relaxed posture. This wasn't an act. They were comfortable, being questioned. Let's begin, Norik said. You don't fight like other species. You change your plans mid-battle. You adapt too quickly to track. Your captain during the Meredith III fight, Julian West, acted without a clear plan. And yet he won. How? Ivy leaned forward. It's not that we don't plan. We just don't believe in only one plan. We start with an idea, Tom added, then build 5 or 6 branches from it. We call them paths. If one fails, we move to another. Fast. Without waiting for approval. But what about control? Norik asked. What about discipline? Chaos destroys unity. Not if the chaos is shared, Ivy said. Every officer in a human fleet knows the mission. They don't need to be told every move. They need to understand the goal. Once they do, they make the best choice in the moment. Norik frowned slightly. That kind of freedom in his own fleet would lead to confusion, even rebellion. And your commanders allow this? He asked. Not only allow it, Tom said. They expect it. They train us to make decisions. That's why you'll never see 2 human battles that look the same. We don't reuse playbooks. We build them live while fighting. Norik leaned back in his chair. You trust your people to think for themselves. Isn't that risky? It is, Ivy said. But it's more dangerous to train soldiers who wait for instructions when time is running out. The room was quiet for a moment. Tell me about your training, Norik said. How do you create soldiers who can think this way? Tom smiled. We don't create them, we guide them. In our academies, we give them problems without clear answers. Then we watch how they solve them. The best ideas come from the ones who try something no one else thought of, even if it fails. You reward failure? Norik asked, surprised. We reward learning, Ivy said. Failure is part of learning. A soldier who tries and fails will try again, smarter. A soldier who never fails usually never takes risks, and risk is where creativity lives. Norik thought back to his own early days in the Sultan Academy. Everything had rules. Every battle scenario had a correct answer. Creativity was something to avoid, not encourage. In my world, he said slowly, we punish those who break from the plan, even when they succeed. Tom's expression didn't change, but his voice turned gentle. Then you're teaching your people to be afraid of new ideas. And in war, fear of change is the first step toward defeat. Norik looked at them in silence. They weren't trying to insult him. They were just speaking plainly. And that honesty hit harder than any insult could. I don't think your advantage is weapons or speed, Norik admitted. I think it's your thinking. You fight like a mind, not a machine. Ivy nodded. That's the goal. We see every soldier as a piece of the mind, not just a piece of the machine. When they think together, they adapt faster than any system. Norik stood slowly. His thoughts were spinning, not from confusion, but from something rarer, discovery. I've learned more from this conversation than I expected, he said. Thank you. You're welcome, Ivy said. And if it helps, just remember, no one ever won a war by staying the same. As Norik walked back to his ship, he kept hearing her words in his head. He had come here looking for tactics, for strategy. What he had found was something deeper, a way of thinking that turned ordinary people into something far more dangerous, something unpredictable, something that learned, something that grew. And for the first time in his life, Norik Zanor wasn't sure if his people were ready for that kind of enemy. Commander Norik Zanor sat alone in his private quarters aboard the Velen Whisper, staring at the blinking cursor on the screen in front of him. It was supposed to be a final report, a summary, something clear and official that he could send to the Sultan High Council. But after 3 weeks, the page was still blank. He had tried many times to write it, starting with numbers and facts. How many ships the humans had, how many they had destroyed, how they used decoys and misdirection. But every version of the report felt wrong, like describing a thunderstorm, by only measuring the rain. What the humans had shown him couldn't be explained with data alone. They had revealed something deeper, and Norik didn't know how to put it into words the council would understand. He leaned back, watching the stars drift outside his window. His mind kept returning to the conversation he had with the 2 human prisoners, Colonel Ivy Moran and strategist Tom Kress. They hadn't bragged or tried to hide anything. They had simply explained how their people thought, how they approached war like a puzzle, not a pattern. Norik had trained for 4 decades in the Sultan Navy, where every scenario had a rule and every rule had a reason. And yet, in one short battle, the humans had torn those rules apart and built something else in their place. A strategy that moved like water, flowing around strength and slipping through control. He had watched more recordings since then. Hundreds of them. Battles fought by different human leaders on different worlds, against enemies with stronger fleets and more soldiers. Yet somehow, over and over again, the humans had found a way to win. Not by overpowering their enemies, but by thinking differently. In one battle, a human fleet had drawn an enemy force into a narrow canyon, using the terrain to trap them like insects in a bottle. In another, they turned their own damaged ship into bait, tricking a larger vessel into chasing it, while the rest of the fleet circled behind. The humans didn't repeat strategies, they invented them. The more Norik watched, the more he saw something his training had never taught him to see. A pattern behind the chaos. It was in the way the humans talked during battle, sharing ideas, adjusting constantly, trusting each other to make smart decisions without waiting for permission. It was in the way they studied their enemies, not just their weapons, but their habits, their fears, their overconfidence. The humans didn't just fight, they learned, even while under fire. And that was the part Norik couldn't report. How? Could he explain to the High Council that the most dangerous weapon humans had wasn't their technology or numbers, but their minds? He stood up and walked to the center of the room, his boots quiet on the metal floor. He remembered something Tom Kress had said. No one wins by staying the same. At the time, it sounded like a simple statement. Now, it felt like a warning. The Sultan military had grown strong by following tradition. But strength without change eventually becomes weakness. The humans weren't stronger. They were changing all the time. Every battle taught them something new. Every mistake became part of the next plan. They weren't afraid to fail. And because of that, they were becoming harder and harder to beat. Norik turned off the screen. There would be no report tonight. Not because he didn't have information, but because information wasn't enough. What he had seen wasn't just a new way of fighting. It was a new way of thinking. The humans were teaching him without meaning to. They were showing him what it meant to lead, not with control, but with trust. To build a team, not of tools, but of minds. And maybe that was the real reason they kept winning. A soft chime sounded from the door. It was Lieutenant De La Rin. "Commander," she said quietly, "the council is asking when your report will be ready." Norik looked at her, then back, at the blank screen. "Tell them I need more time," he said. She hesitated, then nodded. "Understood." After she left, Norik sat back down. Slowly, he began typing, not a report, but a message, a personal request. "To the Sultan High Council," he wrote, "I recommend that I be reassigned not to command but to diplomacy. I wish to request permanent placement as an observer on Earth." He paused, then continued. "I no longer believe we are simply evaluating humanity. I believe we have something to learn from them. Not about weapons, not about strategy, about thinking, about leadership, about change." As he finished the message, he felt something unexpected. Relief. He hadn't failed to write a report. He had just realized that what mattered couldn't be measured in stats and numbers. It had to be experienced. Commander Norik Zanor looked out the window one last time. The stars were still the same, but something inside him was not. He now understood what made humans different. It wasn't what they had. It was what they did with what they had. And in that he saw the future, not just of war but of everything.